What do you look for when you buy a card? Do you look for something thoughtful or serious or maybe something really funny? I guess it depends on you and it depends on who you're shopping for, right? But I'm sure there's one thing we all do when we buy a card. We all look inside. It's hard to assume what's inside the card by simply looking at what's on the outside. It's exactly like that old adage, you should never judge a book by its cover. Unfortunately, a lot of arguments we hear from abortion advocates are based on bad assumptions. It's like buying a card without looking inside it first. For example, abortion advocates often argue that no one knows when life begins, so abortion should be legal. By saying abortion should be legal, aren't they assuming that life begins at birth without having to prove it? Of course, if we don't know when life begins, then perhaps we can make the case that life begins at any point. Let me illustrate. The other day I saw a card that said, "Happy birthday, life begins at 40. Now, of course, when you give this card to a friend, you aren't being serious. You're simply reminding them of all the good things that happen when you get to that age. But if abortion advocates are right, then who's to say this card is wrong? What if life does begin at 40? Does that mean we can kill anybody under 40? Now, abortion advocates would say that's a silly argument, but it's only silly if we know when life begins, and they just claimed we don't. Another classic argument they give is this one, that every child should be a wanted child. In their classic book, Freakonomics, University of Chicago economist Stephen Levitt and New York Times journalist Stephen Dubner argued that legal abortion has reduced crime by ensuring that unwanted children are not born. They argue that unwanted children tend to commit more crimes than those who are wanted. They found that the 5 U.S. states that allowed for abortion sooner also experienced a drop in crime rates faster than those states that kept abortion illegal. But the problem is that abortion advocates who use this kind of argument assume the unborn aren't children at all, without providing any proof. After all, if the unborn are children, then far from decreasing the crime rate, killing them increases the crime rates. Frankly, I agree with them. Every child should be a wanted child. But here's the question. What do they mean by child? Biology tells us the unborn are human offspring. And if that's the case, shouldn't they be wanted too and not killed? Instead of letting abortion advocates make that assumption, we need to ask them to prove that the unborn aren't children. Some abortion advocates may respond with yet another assumption by claiming that women have the right to do whatever they want with their bodies. They argue that abortion is simply the right of women to do as they wish. The problem, of course, is that this argument is built on the assumption that the unborn are part of a woman's body. And once again, abortion advocates have to prove that, something they never do. They would likely fall back on the argument that's supposed to trump all arguments, that women have a right to choose. Well, of course, abortion is a choice, but some choices are wrong. Let me illustrate. At this card store, I can choose whatever card I'd like. There'd be no right or wrong answer. But if I were to buy this card and choose to write a death threat in it, I could go to jail. Why? Because some choices are so wrong, they are illegal. Abortion advocates falsely assume that just because abortion is a choice, it should be legal. But clearly we can see that not all choices are permitted. Not all choices are tolerated by our laws. Frankly, the debate is not over whether abortion is a choice. Of course it is. The debate is, does that choice hurt someone else? And once again, abortion advocates jump to the conclusion that it hurts no one rather than making any attempt to prove their case. Pro-lifers don't need to be intimidated by arguments used by abortion advocates that are based on faulty assumptions. They use them like buying a card without checking the message inside first.